Hey, I'm Roy Harmon, and this is the Hot Pursuit podcast brought to you by LeadPost, the retargeting platform built to help agencies increase revenue and improve ROI for their clients by identifying website visitors that don't convert. Learn more at leadpost.com/agency. Today, we're joined by Jess Schultz of Amplify, who's going to talk to us about generating leads through customer reviews. Thanks for being here, Jess.
Thank you for having me.
So, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you've discovered or come to discover the power of customer reviews for lead generation?
Sure. So currently, I am the founder and CEO of a company called Amplify Group, and we work with startups, mostly high growth, early stage startups, to help them establish themselves from a sales and marketing perspective, like professionalize their processes and accelerate their growth. And so I've always been a strong believer in, your customer's voice is the strongest voice out there when it comes to sales and marketing influence, because it's, an I guess unbiased in a way, third party. And so I started looking into when I started the company, which was roughly 2 years ago, the kind of impact that review sites could have, and the data was very convincing. And so I've been implementing this strategy with clients for the last 2 years, and it's been successful every time.
Awesome. Well, could
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit of just give us an overview of the role that customer reviews play in digital marketing?
Yeah. So I really believe there's a full funnel impact on that reviews give you. So there's, a top of funnel impact in that G2, Capterra, many of these very popular customer review sites, they invest quite a bit of money and manpower into driving traffic to their sites. So there's, a big investment on their side in terms of marketing, SEO, even paid search. And so when you have a presence on those platforms, you inherently catch their tailwinds, if you will. So you get to benefit from their heavy investment on driving traffic to the site. That helps with discovery, of course. So just people becoming more aware of you or discovering that your product exists if you're listed on those sites. And then I encourage my clients to not just stop there, even though that's great that people are hopefully finding us that way and we're getting more leads that way, but to also use it in the middle and bottom of funnel as well. So, after a discovery call, I always follow up with a link to my reviews personally, and I encourage my clients to do the same. Because then right away at the start of the, sales process, we're giving them evidence that we're doing a good job, that we have happy customers, all of that. And then as we get later in the sales process, if we're talking about complex B2B sales, there's often a request from a prospective customer to speak to some of your current customers, right? To do like a reference call. And that can be a tall order for some of us to ask our customers to get on the phone, you know, maybe ever, but definitely if we're having to ask them frequently to get on the phone with prospective customers, I think times are most of our most precious currency. And so having those reviews, in my experience, has reduced the need for people to get on the phone with prospective or with my current customers and with my clients. And so that reduced burden, I guess, on my existing customers is really great. And actually, Gartner put out some statistics. They did surveys, and I want to say it was like 80 something percent of people trust an online customer review just as much as a personal conversation. So they do carry a lot of weight.
So, one of the things that most people struggle with when it comes to customer reviews, most people think that's a great idea. We should do that. But then they struggle when it comes to actually getting the reviews. Do you have any advice for people who either they've been trying to get reviews and haven't had a lot of success, or they're just now realizing, hey, this is the time to do this, and they don't know how to get started?
Yeah. So just in general, I have a philosophy that clarity is how you begin and consistency is how you win. Um, so for getting started, I have a newsletter article I wrote on this that I'm sure you can maybe include in the follow up or the show notes. But basically, the first step is checking to see if you even have a profile on these sites. It could be that these sites have caught wind of your product and created a profile already that you just need to claim, or it could be that it doesn't exist at all, in which case you need to create one. But anyone can create a free profile on most of these sites, at least all the ones I'm familiar with, you can create a free profile. And so that would be the first step, create your profile. And that's just like setting up a LinkedIn company page or something, right? And then the next step is identifying, at least initially, I try to get 20 to 30 like current customers, like identify at least 20 to 30 current customers that I can ask for a review from, and then draft the language that you want to use to procure that review. So I've included some sample language in my newsletter, and then Gartner has put out, I think NG too, they've all put out some suggested language that you can use to request these reviews. And the nice thing about all these platforms is, even if you have, like in my case, I work with a lot of startups, so they don't have a lot of customers yet in terms of like volume a lot of times. Like they might only have 20 or 30 enterprise customers. But the nice thing is you can ask multiple people at that account. And almost always we're not just facing off with one person, especially at a large organization and enterprise, we're facing off maybe with 5 or 6. So being able to reach out to all of those different people at your account and request the review. And then I usually just frame it up as, hey, we're looking to, double down on our marketing efforts, or we're looking to improve our awareness. I think, again, most of us in for-profit businesses can appreciate that one another are trying to do that. And I usually say, I'm just really honest about it. Like that's our goal. We're trying to improve awareness. We're trying to improve discoverability. We're focused on go-to-market. One of the things we think is going to be really valuable is, your personal testimony, because your experience and in your own words carries so much weight. Would you be so kind as to leave us a review? Here's the link. I don't personally dangle rewards at that point, although some people do, like say, if you take the time to do this, we'll give you a $50 gift card or something. But I do send a gift after they've taken the time to do that for me. But I don't I just don't dangle that up front. I kind of do that as like a fun surprise after they've done it. Either way works. And then the goal with a lot of these is to get to a minimum of 10 to start, because that's when you start to really get like on their, like the G2 team, for example, publishes these quarterly grid reports. And so getting up to 10 is how you ultimately like get on that grid to begin. And then recency is really important, because I think all of us, right, if we go look at a page and all the reviews are from 2 years ago, it's going to carry less weight. So I encourage my clients anyway, get to 10 as a starting point, like make that your first goal, and then try to continue to add at least 5 per quarter. Those numbers may vary depending on if like I'm again working with startups, so those are like conservative numbers for startups. But if you're a bigger organization, you might want to like double or triple those. A good way I found to keep that as a consistent thing is to build it into some part of your OKRs and maybe assign it to your customer success team. So perhaps like each person on the customer success team is responsible for, getting 5 new reviews each quarter or something like that. That can be a good way to not lose sight of it, and to encourage your team to all be part of, building this up.
And when people do have the ability to be at least a little bit choosy in who they ask to leave a review, do you think that that's a good idea to try to identify people who you think are most likely to leave a positive review? Or do you think just send everybody a request? And I guess what I'm really wondering is if you do think it makes sense to really zero in on the people you think are going to leave good reviews, do you have any advice on how to find those people?
Yeah. I do think when you're first building your profile, it's important that they're all positive. If there's not that many yet, right? Like if there's only 5 and most of them aren't great, that's not going to be a good start. So I at least, definitely at the beginning of building my inventory, I'd focus on happy customers. And then over time, I think And hopefully, if you're just doing a good job of serving your customers, most of your customers are happy customers. But then I think over time, as you have more volume, you can be more broad in the net that you cast. As far as finding happy customers, I mean, I think that's going to vary from business to business, meaning like some of my clients that are again working with large enterprise customers, they have those relationships are 50 to $1 million, 50K to $1 million annual contracts. They know who's happy, right? Because they're like very ingrained in those businesses and they know what's going on. So they are, I don't know, like it's just in their mental log, like who's happy. I think maybe if you have more of a lower cost product where you're not talking to your users or talking to your customers every day, then I would just look at like usage data and maybe if you're running like NPS surveys or other customer feedback surveys already, like in-house, use that to leverage like reaching out to your top NPS survey respondents, or like I would reach out to my super users in the case of like who's logging in the most, who's spending the most time on the platform, like looking for data points like that would hopefully indicate loyalty and happiness.
Great. And then once you have these reviews, how do you recommend that people use them across the customer journey? How do you typically get these in front of people to make sure that they're making the biggest impact possible?
Yes. So, one, educate your sales team, right? Make sure that they know your sales force and your marketing. I hope your marketing team knows because they're probably the ones driving a lot of this. But make sure your sales team knows that this is a public link, a public link they should be including in their follow-up emails and proposals and, all of that, like making sure that they're incorporating it in their sales process and their sales outreach. Put it on your website. So you can there's some tools out there that will like automatically syndicate and like import your reviews from G2. One I'm familiar with is called ElfSite, but I think there's others on the market too. And then if you don't want to have it be automated and you want to kind of pick and choose which ones you want to highlight, which is what I personally do on my website, just pick out a couple, right? But if once the reviewer has published the review, it's public information. So then at that point, I feel very comfortable taking that public quote and putting it on my website, right? Because the customer's already like opted into that publicity. So I think leverage them on your website. Also in social media. So once we get those reviews, I'll also like make them a little more styled, right? In brand colors and maybe underline or bold certain points that they made that are extra relevant to the message I'm trying to deliver, and share those out on social media, either on the company account or on personal accounts. Both are great. And then once you are collecting more reviews over time, you might even win, again, like kind of awards, right? Like top performer in your category or, whatever, best new solution for X or whatever it is. Then those are, again, like awards that you can start to promote and leverage from a press perspective as well.
Stepping back a little bit, when it comes to gathering these reviews, do you have any recommendations as to where people start? I think that it's probably difficult to get people to go and leave a review on a bunch of different review sites. How important do you think it is to pick the right site, and how do you make sure that the site you're choosing is the one that's going to make the biggest impact?
Totally. And that's a really good question. I focus most on B2B software. So in my experience, G2 is the leader there. But to your point, most of them, G2 included, you can get access to either, like in G2's platform, it's just visible in the free plan. But even if it wasn't, I have to imagine if you reached out to their sales team, like them or Gartner, whoever, they would give you this data as like part of the because they're incentivized to incentivize you to become a paying customer, so they would probably give you this data. But you can ask them, or you can look up how much traffic is already coming to your page that exists once you create it, and or how much traffic is on that site for your category. So like, for example, my business Amplify Group has a page. I can see how many people have visited that page in the last month, 6 months, year, etc. And I can see if that's been growing or declining on average. And then I can also see for the categories I'm part of, like, for example, I'm part of sales consulting as a category. I can see how many shoppers are on each platform for that category across me and all my competitors. And I can also see again the percent change month over month, year over year. And so that's what I would use to narrow in on which platform has the most traffic for my specific category or maybe to my competitors. To that point, and something else I do to determine is see, like, for myself or for any of my clients, look up your competitors on these platforms and see if they are already focused on this as a strategy or not. So if, for example, I can see that, I don't know, 5 other clients or 5 other companies and that are competitors to my client are not really leveraging this, but there is significant web traffic, that would be the second thing to check, right? If they're not leveraging it and there isn't really web traffic, well, then maybe it's not as much worth it. But if they aren't leveraging it and there is web traffic, then I'm going to be able to become a leader in that category pretty quickly. And again, rise to the top of the search rankings, just like with SEO, you're trying to get to the top of the Google search results. This is kind of like getting to the top of the customer review site search results. So that's what I would be looking at to figure out which platform I invest in.
And assuming that it's G2, I know a lot of these options like Capterra is primarily ad based for their revenue. But for some of these other options, especially G2, how important do you think it is to actually have a paid or premium listing with G2?
So I do think it can be really valuable if you have the resources to leverage the data effectively, right? So like, again, sometimes I'm working with startups where like they just have very small and lean teams. So we could get the data, but then they might not have the manpower to do much with it, right? But the types of things you can do if you have the manpower is you can turn on quite a bit of marketing automation as a result of this data. And you can feed it straight into your Salesforce or your HubSpot or at least those 2 CRMs. I'm sure there's maybe others too. Meaning, for example, I could say every time someone does a search within our ICP looking for a competitor, for an alternative to my competitor. So let's just say my competitor is whatever, ABC Corp. I can see that every time someone looks for alternatives to ABC Corp, and then I can start setting up marketing automation off the back of that, right? Because that's I'm fairly confident at that point that they're probably using ABC Corp and looking to leave. And so maybe then marketing to them either through like paid channels, organic channels, cold outbound may be more effective because that's a strong signal. Or like if they've already visited our page multiple times, that would be another, like that could influence a lead score, right? And tip us off that maybe even though they haven't filled out a lead form or talked to us yet, they seem to be researching us quite a bit. And so that could be a trigger. So those are all, again, data points that you can either leverage from a marketing or a sales standpoint if you have the time and the manpower to do it.
Yeah, that can be really good for retaining clients
That
as well.
too,
If you see
correct.
like, oh, why are my customers looking at my competitors? Might need to do some
You got it.
damage control there. Well, what about pitfalls? Are there anything is there anything that people need to be aware of, be careful about to make sure that this doesn't have the opposite effect that they're intending?
Um, I mean, I think, I hope most of you guys are just focused on building a good product and delivering a good customer experience as a starting point, right? Like, so if you are, then I don't think there's much to be afraid of. If you already know that you don't, if you already know you have a lot of customer complaints or a lot of unhappy customers or a product that's not fully fleshed out, then I guess that would maybe be when I would caution people not to. I guess I'm grateful that I haven't worked with any any companies like that yet. But I think maybe what you're getting at is like, if you have the review site live, it's possible that you'll get a negative review whether you ask for it or not, right? Like someone could just have a negative experience and go find your site and leave a review about it. I mean, that's going to happen, right? Like we're never going to make everybody happy, in my opinion. And even if you don't claim the profile on these sites, a profile for your company could still exist and people could still do that. So it's like it could happen anyway. I will say with the paid profiles, I know then you're able to respond to the negative commentary like in platform so they can actually see you saying, I'm so sorry you had this experience, da da da, whatever, appropriate response you want to give. Whereas if you have a free profile, you can't do any kind of company response. So that might be another reason that people would upgrade, although that wouldn't be my primary driver. So, I mean, I guess that's always going to be a risk, but I don't think that it would be one that dissuades me from doing this, given the potential upside, I think is bigger than the downside.
I actually saw a statistic somewhere, and I can't remember where. In fact, I think probably a bunch of different people who want us to get reviews have probably discovered this statistic, like Gartner and other companies. But I've seen that some negative reviews actually heightens the credibility of your good reviews, because otherwise people are getting in there and it's like, oh, everybody loves this. This is just, they've manipulated this or it's rigged. And if you have a couple of bad ones in there, then it looks a little more real to people.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Or at least like, encouraging, even if people are happy with you, like, I mean, just thinking about myself, like with restaurants maybe or something I've gone to, like I might say like, yeah, the food was amazing. The service wasn't that great. Like you can encourage people to be honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that might be like, the user experience is amazing. The service really needs some help. And then again, that should be a tip off to you as the person that, is running that company. Okay, everyone loves our product, but we really need to work on our support model. What do we need to do here to improve? And I think people respect as well employers, companies that take that with grace and take it to get better and don't just like dismiss it. So I think then you could turn that into something that builds a lot of credibility and trust too. Like, hey, we saw a lot of feedback on our site that our service needed help. We've doubled down our investment. We've implemented X, we've done Y, and we really think you're going to see a difference. Like, let us know. Like, we heard you. So I think you can even spin that in a positive light.
Now that is a potential pitfall, I think, is if you need to think about the way you respond to
Yes,
unhappy customers, because the way you described it, that's the perfect way to go about it. But every now and then you get in there, and I don't care whether it's on G2, Capterra, or the Better Business Bureau, there's some business owner or marketer who they just can't stand that you don't love their product, and they get angry, and there's like nothing makes me feel less like I want to do business with a company than seeing that. So
no
that's definitely something to
accountability.
think about.
Yep.
Right. Well, and
Agreed.
mean and rude
Yeah,
to me,
and mean. Yes, that's really bad.
One of my favorite kind of review to find as a shopper myself, whether it's for a B2B product or something that I'm looking for just on Amazon, I love to find a review that's like, and these are usually going to be the 3-star reviews, where they don't love it, they don't hate it, but I love it when the problems they have are ones that don't apply to me. So I can say,
Fair.
okay, they don't like it, so this is a real review, but that's not the same for me. Like if they say, oh, well, I got lead post and I didn't like it because it gave me emails and not people's favorite color or something. It's like,
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
like,
need to know people's favorite color.
exactly.
So that's fine. I can trust this review, and it sounds like there's no problem with getting the emails. So that's always nice. Of course, I don't know. It's probably hard to engineer a way to get those?
Well, to building on what you're saying, it's again, at least in G2, I know that you can filter, and I do this because I use G2 myself to like shop for software, aside from being a sales and marketing tool. But when I go look at a tool that I'm trying to evaluate, I filter the reviews for companies of my size and companies in my industry. And I read those to maybe to your point to be like, okay, I don't really care what somebody at an enterprise thinks because I'm not an enterprise. They probably have very different requirements than I do. What do people like me think? So I do at least know you can filter on G2. I have to imagine Capterra has that capability, I would guess, but
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about, it sounds like you're most familiar with the G2.
mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about just some of the things that you find are really valuable about it, things that people could leverage to their benefit?
Yeah, I think, like I said, looking at it, looking at your competitors on there, and if they are obviously leveraging it as a channel and collecting reviews, it can be a great way to do market research, right? You can read what do people love about it? What do people hate about it? Like that can then be, that can influence the way you go to market. Um, or again, if they're not using it, it can be a way for you to shoot up to the top pretty quickly by focusing on it. So I definitely use it for competitive intelligence. Um, like I said, definitely for lead gen. I mean, I've seen it be even for, again, my company's 2 years old, and it's very small, less than 5 employees. And it's been one of my largest drivers for inbound leads. Because well, it's funny. I came out and said that on LinkedIn that, I'm number two in sales consulting and this is my number one source of leads. And then a bunch of my competitors got on it. Now I'm no longer number two.
Oops.
Because yeah, it was pretty funny. But I guess I'm saying like even as a small company, it can have a big impact. So if you're a big company, with me again, I'm saying I have a limited number of customers that I've even worked with to date, right? So if I had 500 customers, I could really hopefully quickly rise up or lever that as an inbound channel. So like definitely as an inbound channel. And then, like I said, for the credibility throughout your sales cycle and through the decision making process and to lessen that burden on your customers. Like those are the other big things. Oh, but I just did think other than sales and marketing, I've also found it to be very helpful, although this was like a side benefit that I didn't anticipate in helping to talent to find you. So there was several people that applied on my careers page, for example, and I didn't even have any jobs listed. And I reached out to them and I was like, I'm not hiring right now, but thank you for your interest. Just curious, how did you find me? And they were like, oh, on G2. And I was like, that is so smart as a candidate to go there and see like what do the customers think. I want to work at a company where the customers love the company. And I was like, oh wow, that was really smart. So a fringe side benefit is that it might help you with recruiting or it might help top talent find you. Um, and then if you're fundraising or looking to sell your company, right? Like either venture capital funding or private equity or whatever, I do know they are leveraging this as well to confirm um, both customer satisfaction and overall demand for that category. And so, like, that might be something you could lever in your investor conversations, or they, I guess, be aware that they're probably looking at it.
In my experience, they are highly, highly interested in G2 reviews. I know that one company that I worked with that raised over $100 million, one of the biggest things they were looking at was G2 reviews.
Yep.
And so that was a big part of the push to get them to invest. It was a big part of it was a really a big part of what led so many uh, people to just come to this company instead of that company having to go out and reach out to people. That's a
Yep.
great point. Well,
Totally.
thank you so much, Jess. This is really a great conversation. It's beneficial to me, and I know it'll be beneficial to our audience. Can you tell everybody where they can follow you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jess Schultz, and I'm sure you'll include my website or something, but my website's amplifyscales.com because that's what we scale, or that's what we do, scale your revenue.
Awesome. And we'll have everybody you can find the links to that on our site under this episode. So thanks again, Jess.
Thank you.